Well, howdy, partner. I didn't see you there. Probably because I'm not wearing my glasses. Now I know what you're thinking. How can you call yourself a cowboy when your eyes don't even work properly? And to answer that matter truthfully, I'm no real cowboy. I'm not like the men who lost their lives that brave day at Butcher's Crossing. I'm not a real cowboy because this flannel I'm wearing was made at J.C. Penney. I'm not a real cowboy because I'm wearing this thick-ass flannel in 82-degree weather. I'm wearing shorts and everything. And I'm gonna be honest, I can't even see myself in the camera preview. God, my eyesight is really bad. Welcome back to the worst channel in the entirety of the internet, Jelly2, my second channel. I'm gonna do a thing now where every time I finish a book, I'm gonna talk about it because I like books and I feel like people should read more. So, about a month ago, I finished this book, Butcher's Crossing by John Williams. It was made into a movie starring Nicolas Cage, and I like it. I also forgot to mention, so this is at the end of the video, but I'm going to put it in the beginning. I'm also the author of 2 books. Hold on a Minute, What's Your Problem? Both available on Amazon.com. You should check it out right now, but it's really cool. But this video is about a different book, so let's get to that. Now, John Williams is the author of 4 novels and a collection of poetry that is not his own. But he's a very reclusive author. He mostly spent his time teaching rather than writing. But the novels he did make are all wildly, I wouldn't say popular, but good. They all received very positive critical reception. The book he's most notably known for is Stoner, and that is my second favorite book of all time. It is immaculate. It is amazing. It's a masterpiece. It's 10 out of 10. And he's also the author of Nothing But the Night, but he's a bit ashamed of that because he made it when he was much younger. And he also won the Nobel Prize for his novel Augustus. But that's not what this is about. This is about Butcher's Crossing. So, is it better than Stoner, the other work of his that I read? Personally, in my opinion, no. But it comes damn close. The thing that fascinates me about Williams is that, from what I gather, all 4 of his books are all widely different in genre. Nothing But the Night is a noir thriller. Butcher's Crossing is a western. Stoner is just adult literary fiction, takes place within a school setting. And Augustus is epistolary, meaning it's told through the perspective of letters. And it's about the Roman Emperor Augustus. Now, there's actually a video by Man Carrying Thing talking about the book a bit more, and it goes very in-depth with the plot. It's basically a plot recap and just explaining what's so good about it and the details about how the buffalo hunts from the 1870s were really not good for the world. But I just want to talk about my overall thoughts without spoiling anything too bad. So Butcher's Crossing takes place in the 1870s. It follows the adventure of William Andrews. And he was studying at Harvard for 3 years and then decided to throw that all away and go to Butcher's Crossing, Kansas, a town full of buffalo hunters and prostitutes. In that town, he meets J.D. McDonald, a friend of his father's, who manages buffalo hides, the hunting and selling of them. He offers Andrews a job, and he's like, no, I'm here for the hunting business. I'm here to get in touch with nature. Even though, hunting buffalo is actually not really getting in touch with nature. It's kind of the opposite. It's kind of defiling it. It's a whole thing about irony, J.D. McDonald is like, that is not a good idea. Hunters live awful lives. We will later find out that is absolutely true. But if you really want to know, check out this guy named Miller. So he goes and finds the guy named Miller and his acquaintance Charlie Hodge, and also a prostitute by the name of Francine. Miller and Andrews talk a bunch, and Miller ends up inviting Andrews to hunt 3,000 buffalo with him. Here's a little bit of a historical context for you. In the mid-1800s, the white man decided it was a great idea to hunt a gajillion fucking buffaloes, to the point where they were almost extinct. This is not only because their hides would sell well, but because it would further the dependency that Native Americans would have on the fellow white man. Nowadays, our history classes and textbooks will tell us that this is an evil deed, as it is. but during that time, it was just seen as the way of life, the thing to do out west. During the 1870s, their population was whittled down to what was believed to be around 3,000 or so, which, if you know, is not a lot. But Miller, claiming he saw a huge herd in this hidden valley in Colorado that nobody else knows about, and decides to grab Andrews, and he's like, "Bro, we're gonna make a lot of money, you and me." I think that's how the quote goes. So William Andrews pays for the entire trip from his pocket in order to just make more money from the buffalo hides. Now, I did the math, and Andrews had $1,400 in his pocket. That is $52,344.14. He spent $600 to fund the trip, which was $22,433.20. He ends up spending more later on, and, it's a huge investment for a trip that we don't even know will happen, because Miller found these buffalo 10 years ago. But they decide to go on the trip anyway. And so Miller hires the services of Fred Schneider, a skinner who is going to teach Andrews how to skin animals and also just be a helping hand. And thus the four men wander off out of Butcher's Crossing, Kansas, into the Colorado Rocky Mountains to find the valley where the buffalo are. And that is part 1 of the book. The book is separated into 3 parts. Part 1 is the little lead up, part 2 is the actual hunt, part 3 is the aftermath. I'm not going to spoil part 2 and 3, but I will let you know that the buffalo are real, but the hunting trip still goes very wrong for many reasons. I should also mention that the prostitute named Francine had a thing for Will, and Will, they were going to have sex, but then Will pussied out at the last minute, and I just want to say I feel that I too am afraid of women. Now, moving on, something that makes this book so good for me is just the detail and prose. John Williams, much like one of my other favorite authors, Charles Bukowski, is a master with the word in a very simplistic way. They are geniuses because they can convey so much information and make you feel so much using very simple and little words. And much like his other novel, Stoner, Williams manages to convey information from such a detached, apathetic point of view, and yet when it wants to get into the mind of a character, it really makes you feel like this is a first-person book. Now, granted, Stoner gets into the mind of the main character so much more than Butcher's Crossing, and it makes me feel way more attached to William Stoner than William Andrews. That being said, though, you still do feel attached to Andrews in some way, even if he's a dumb idiot for most of the book. Now, as you can expect, being a Western novel that came out in the year 1960, it is actually more of a critique of the Western genre as a whole, much like The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, Django Unchained, Red Dead Redemption, so on and so forth. So we don't get this epic grand adventure, instead we get a sad, miserable, realistic experience of what it was like to live in the Western frontier during the year 1870. How brutal the buffalo hunt was. This is a very disturbing book, not because anything super bad happens, but just because the amount of visceral detail described when the buffaloes start dying. There's a scene where Miller is just mercilessly gunning them down, and it doesn't paint him as a monster, but rather a machine, a product of his time. Everybody was doing this, and Miller is simply doing it, but he's doing it better than others. Non-stop slaughtering buffalo. There's a moment in the book where Andrews has to gut a buffalo. He has to skin and gut it so that the rest of the camp may eat it for dinner. And it is described in such vigorous detail that it kind of makes me feel sick to my stomach. But even then, eventually Andrews moves on from that after days and days of killing buffalo to where he's basically an expert in just skinning buffalo, cutting them down for a good buffalo steak. Fucking the buffaloes. I don't know. And it's all told in such a very concise and simple way that makes this book, despite being only about 300 pages or so, I believe... Hold on. The book ends on page 274, and yet it feels like such a big journey to me. I felt like I spent all those days in the Colorado Rockies with Andrews and Miller and Charlie Hoge and Fred Schneider. And that's another thing. These 4 characters that we spend most of the book with, you feel like you know everything about them, and at the same time you know nothing about them. Obviously you know a lot about Andrews because he's the main character. It's being told mostly through his perspective. We never really delve into the mind of any of the other characters, really. Mostly just Andrews. But, with the other characters, we know that Miller is an experienced hunter who knows his stuff, but we also see cracks in his character. On the journey to the Colorado Rockies, there's a moment where they go off-road, off the trail, so that they will arrive at their destination sooner. But we don't know if they'll come across water, and they have to go through 2 agonizing days with no water, to the point where all their cattle are almost going to die from being thirsty. I don't remember, like, dehydrated to death. I don't remember the word. It's to the point where Miller has to wet a rag and just dap all their cattle's tongues so it prevents them from swelling and suffocating to death on their own tongue. We see these cracks, these moments of greediness. There's a scene where Schneider is sort of getting frustrated at Miller for killing too many buffalo. It's going to up the workload for both Andrews and Schneider on skinning them all. But Miller does the old Walter White of, we're done when I say we're done. Charlie Hoge is a huge religious nut. I also forgot to mention that he does not have his left hand. I think it's his left hand. He lost it from being frozen in the Colorado Rockies. He lost it to hypothermia. So, of course, he's a religious nut who also likes whiskey. But when things start going wrong, he just breaks mentally. He reforms into a shell of himself. He just freaks out. He has a complete breakdown. Schneider is very rude and just mean and off-putting to everyone else around him. He is the exact opposite of Andrews in every way possible, and he's kind of a cool foil in the sense that he has to work with him, he has to teach Andrews, but they don't necessarily like each other. But by the end, things change, but under very weird circumstances and not in a way you would expect. And then there's Andrews, who is a dumbass. He's a young, ignorant fool. He's so used to his sheltered life in Harvard that, yeah, he did experience the West, and he experienced that it was not really a fun place at all. He sees Francine, the prostitute, not as a woman, but as a product of her time. He feels pity that she has to fuck men for money to make a living, but that's just the way of the West. That's one of the essential things you can do in the West. But he just sees her as this poor, pitiful thing, rather than her own person. And then by the end of the book, when everything's changed, and they come back to Butcher's Crossing, spoilers, they make it back, we get to see Andrews realize what a fool he was this entire time, and it's a very cathartic moment, and I love it. And then there's the movie. The movie sucks. It's really bad. It has Nicolas Cage in it, playing Miller, and it's really, really bad. Miller is depicted as this just a product of his time. He's just a machine in the book. He hunts buffalo, he does it well, and that's that. But in the movie, he's kind of a psycho. During their travels to the Colorado Rockies, in the book, they come across this group of natives who have been displaced from their home due to, buffalo hunting and the other... Not Jim Crow. Jim Crow is... I forget the name of the laws, but, government interference with Native American lives. And in the book, it's just a sad, disturbing thing because it barely lasts a paragraph at all. Instead, it's treated like they're nothing worth acknowledging. And to Andrews, that's how it is. Nobody gave a shit about Native Americans back then, and the book reflects that by barely spending any time on it. Andrews just forgot about it completely. However, in the movie, Nicolas Cage points a gun at Andrews for offering to help them because he's crazy. Book Miller would either actually help them or he'd just be like, "Let's not waste your time on him. Come on, let's go." He wouldn't point his gun at Andrews. That's insane. I get that it's hard to transfer the disturbing, visceral detail the book provides into a movie form, so it instead goes for this psychological horror instead, and it just does it really bad. Charlie Hodge starts poisoning Fred Schneider, and Schneider kills Hodge. Spoilers, that doesn't happen in the book. Hodge lives at the end. It's really... It's so baffling. It's so bad. The acting is alright. The music was very out of place and did not fit the tone at all of the original book. And the things they change in the end are really weird. Also, J.D. McDonald, the first scene with him and Andrews, it's he talks very cartoonishly. His first line is just very cartoonishly delivered. Very funny. Yeah, movie sucks. Read the book instead. But if you want to watch the movie, that's okay. Like, just watch the like, from the way I've described the book, just watch the trailer for the movie and you'll understand why I feel very upset when thinking about it. But also really funny. It's like, honestly, it's a bad movie in the same way that, like, The Room or Madam Web is a bad movie. Like, it's so bad, it's good. But anyways, yeah, that's just all my thoughts on this book. If you like it, if you like the way I described it, I recommend you pick it up and read it. This is specifically the New York Review Books copy. This is easily the best copy that is out there because, you know, it's just made a good material, has a good introduction from someone who studied alongside John Williams, so it's someone who even knows the author doing the introduction. It's formatted well, it's good, it's nice. So yeah, pick it up and read it if you're interested. If you like books where someone goes into a situation and comes out of it in a worse spot physically, but internally have changed for the better, I would recommend you read it. If you like Westerns, I recommend you read it. If you like critiques of genres, think you'll like it. It's very good. Something about U.S. soldiers landing on Vietnamese soil the second this book came out. Something about John Williams being the composer for Star Wars and the author, but not actually. Something about man carrying thing. Buy my books. Bye-bye. Over here, Arthur! Arthur!